So hello and welcome to the Launch School Tech Talk and Intro to VIM. My name is Mark Henninger and I'm from Berlin and I'm a current Launch School student. And one thing I want to say at first is that I'm not a VIM expert. I started learning VIM about 9 to 10 months ago. Last year there was a talk by Julius Zervig on the command line, and at the end he talked a little bit just very briefly about VIM and Tmux, and that really intrigued me, and I started learning. I went deep into VIM and spent a couple of weeks learning how to use VIM and what you can do with it and taking further, and I was really happy with it, so I kept going with it, learned more about it, and today, again, I'm no expert, but it's my main editor, and I use it for a lot of things. And I hope after this talk that you will give VIM a try. Today, I would like to talk about three things. I would start with a short history on VIM, because I think it's very beneficial to know where VIM comes from and what were the design decisions to make VIM the way it works. And that's a short detour to the history. Then number two is I would like to entice you to try VIM, and I'll show you with my own setup what I did. So to build a lightweight IDE that I can use for Launch School, for challenges and for exercises. And I will show you there what I did and what you can do very quickly after just a few weeks of working with VIM. And number three is getting started. That's where the rubber hits the road. I will show you how the basics for VIM, how to get into VIM, how to get out of it, how to get help, what the modes are, the movements, the basic objects, and the commands. And I hope to get through all of these things. And if we have some time left at the end, I'll show you some nice features. There's a lot more to VIM than that. We're not going to go into config files or plugins or buffer management. That's all a little advanced. Today, we're just going to focus on the editor itself. So let's get started with the history of VIM. And VIM starts actually with V by Bill Joy, which was released in 1979. And V stands for visual. And V was actually a visual mode based on the X editor by Bill Joy that he released a couple years earlier. X editor was a line editor like the shell. And there he built a visual mode where you can actually move up and down and change things like we do in editor today. But back then it was pretty new. One thing in 1979 is the mouse existed, but it was not ubiquitous. And people just used terminals, basically keyboards, to move around. So they couldn't use a mouse to click on. And the V visual editor had to take care of that and to find other ways around you not having buttons or mouse to interact with the editor. And another thing, you won't believe it, but V almost took up all system resources back in 1979. So when V was released, it was kind of like top of the line software. And today it's a very, very small program that loads blazingly fast. What you can see in here is the terminal ADMZA. That's the terminal that V was developed in. And one of the most important things I would like, if you look at the H, J, K, and L keys, there are errors on them. And if you look to the lower right, there are no error keys. So because the arrows were on these keys, Bill Joy had to decide, or it was kind of like common, to use these H, J, K, and L keys to move around. And that's what we use today in VIM to move around as well, H, J, K, and L. And that just comes from how the terminal back in the day was set up. Another thing, if you look a little to the right, to the control key, can show you right now, that's where we have today the caps lock key. One thing that a lot of VIMers do is they rebind the caps lock key to the control key because it's easier to reach and then easier to use as a modifier key. And actually, who needs a caps lock key, if you think about it? There are some other differences, but the other main difference is that we only have a control key to have a modifier key, unless today where we have command, option, or anything else. So today we have a lot of modifier keys. Back then we only had control and a shift key to get capitalized or not capitalized letters. Okay, going forward to VIM. VIM actually stands for V Improved, and it was released in 1991 by Bram Moolenaar. And he did a lot of improvements to the original V, because in 1991 we had personal computers, the mouse was used a lot more, so there's mouse support, though it doesn't actually make sense to use Vim with a mouse. And Vim, what he changed, one of the big things is he made it highly customizable. So other than in V, you can have different themes, you can build plugins, you have Vim script, and the benefit is you still load files extremely fast. If you have regular editors, even Sublime Text, and you load it with big libraries or big files, it takes some time. Vim is always super fast. And if Vim not loading because it's too slow, you can always go back to V, and V basically loads everything blazingly fast. Another big benefit of Vim is that it's included with almost every Linux distro in all of macOS. The good thing is, if you ever have to SSH to an Apache server and you don't know what kind of editor to use there, you can just use Vim because it is going to be installed there. On macOS, it's already installed, though you should use a newer version if you want to try that. And on Windows, you can install it there as well, but it doesn't come out of the box. There are graphical versions of Vim as well for macOS and other systems. And there are some Vim extensions for Sublime Text and VS Code. So if you do like Vim and you do like the way how to move around in Vim, what you can get some of that flavor in Sublime Text, for example. But actually, for my part, if you like Vim, then just use Vim or use NeoVim or a graphical version of Vim, because there you always get the full power. So pro and cons, who's Vim for, who's not for? The two biggest pros. The first one is Vim is incredibly, blazingly fast. If you want to move around the document, there's nothing faster than Vim. But you have to know touch typing. If you can't touch type, that's one of the cons. You should learn touch typing first before you start using Vim. Because without touch typing, you might be faster just clicking buttons and using a mouse. Then again, it's highly customizable. You can make Vim the editor that you want. You can very easily bind little macros and scripts to key combinations that just do what you need to do. So everyone who uses Vim can easily make it into the editor he wants to use, from not only the colors, but even the functionalities. And because it's has direct access to the shell, or is integrated into the shell, you can use a lot of shell programs, or the other way around. Vim is almost 30 years old. So there are already a lot of plugins and scripts written for Vim that take advantage of a lot of things that you might need. So whenever you think, this would be cool in Vim, probably someone else already thought of that and built a plugin to actually get your solution. And if it's so specific that you can't find a solution, you can even program it yourself. You just have to learn how. We're not going to go into that today, but that's one of the bony you can do. Another con is it's not an IDE. I show you how to build a lightweight IDE, but if your company demands that you have to use a certain IDE, probably Vim is not going to cut it. And it's not good for casual writing. So if you just write emails or use a phone, then Vim is probably too much. So for coders and programmers, they can really benefit from Vim if they can touch type. And another con is it has a little bit of a learning curve. I think the learning curve in the beginning is a little steep because you have to first learn Vim and then you have to get into muscle memory. That's actually the big part. Not knowing how Vim works, but to have your fingers do on the keyboard what they need to do. Once you get over that hill, it's pretty easy because everything you learn will always be embedded in the Vim system. So you just have to know what you want to do and how are the commands for it on the keyboard. And then you can basically connect it to all the other parts in Vim that you already know. But lots of talking, let's get started. I'd like to show you a little bit what I did with Vim. So here's my terminal setup. If you want to start Vim, it's actually pretty easy. If you have a Mac, you just type Vim, and there you are. That's in Vim. That's one of the big bony. Let me get rid of the message. Vim is very much without any distractions. as you can see, there is, I'll use the mouse right now to show a little better. Up here, you can see the one for the line number. You can see my cursor. You have like a little gray dot there that tells me where 80 characters are. So I know when I code, when Rubocop is going to get angry with me. Down here, you have a little button bar for Vim. It tells me I'm in normal mode, I'm on Git master, and well, the file doesn't have a name. This down here, the lowest bar, that's a tmux bar. We're not going to talk about that one today. And the one in the middle, that's where we can write commands. And that's it. The beauty of Vim, or one of the best things about Vim, is there is no distractions, no buttons, no extras. You can just code. You can just focus on your code and write in there. That's it. But you have a lot of features at your fingertips. So a lot of talking, let's get started. Let's just write something very simple, a simple program. We call it def greeting. I guess you've seen that before. We put in a string, and then we print out that string with a message. Get this done. And let's call them. So one thing you can see, it's everything is white, because right now Vim doesn't know what kind of file it is. So the first thing I'd like to show you is how to save the file. So, and if you want, what you do is you have to write a command down here in the bar. And what you type for that is the colon. Now you see the colon appeared here and my cursor jumped down here. And now I can write Vim commands for that. And the command for saving is W or write. You can write both. Then you have to give it a name. For example, greeting.rb. The moment I hit enter, it saves it as greeting.rb. And you can see now I get some colors because Vim has syntax highlighting out of the box. And if I have a little command, and now I get the proper indentation. Vim will, from now on, I can show you, know the proper indentation whenever I get a new line, because it knows it's a Ruby file, and Ruby wants, at least for the first indentation, 2 spaces. That's it. So I have this file. So the nice thing I can do with it right now is, as with my IDE, I can just run this file. I can type a little command, don't need any button, and it's going to open a split screen, start a shell session, and then it's going to run. Oh yeah, of course, it's an error. Very good, because I didn't put in a name, for example, in here. Then I can rerun it. And now it's printing out. And that was actually a pretty good thing. I had an error in there. I saw that. I can fix the error, and I never have to leave the editor because I can give commands in the editor to run my terminal session. That is a big benefit. Instead of using another editor, then have to go to the editor, run the terminal again, jumping back, correcting errors. I can do these things side by side. And that's what you can call a very lightweight IDE. There are some other benefits you can get in there for Vim, but we're not going to talk about them today. Those are plugins that really make Vim more and more powerful. We can have access to a standard library of Ruby. You can have access to all the plugins, to all the gems that you installed in a project. That's a little bit too far. Another nice thing, you can, what I did is I wrote a little script. It's not even a script. It's just a command sequence that adds, that adds pry to the next line. One of the things, whenever I try to check up on problems, I had to require pry in the top and then go down, write binding.pry. In here with a little key binding that's actually called pry, it just adds pry on the next line. Let's save that. And if I run the program again, it will actually run pry. And one of the nice things for that, if I want to run this line, I can just go have another key binding, and it will just run the line in pry, and it will tell me put string, returns nil, and prints, in this case, hello Joe. Very, very nice. Go out of here. Jump back and forth between Tmux and Vim is very easy as well. And I have a very, very lightweight IDE that I can do with that. And the last thing I'd like to show you is when I was working on all these exercises, I always had to copy the exercise and then put them in the editor and save it again. And I wrote a little key combination for it that I called delete, paste, and save, called DPS, which does just that. It just deletes everything in the current editor, pastes in the copy text, and then if you see down here in the lower left, you can see colon save as, which literally means save as, and now I can, for example, save it as example.rb, and with a little key combination, I can comment everything out. And now I can get started with the going through PEDAC, then commenting out the different test cases again, and just go through the whole movement. And I have everything just in the editor, so I have to just copy it one time, can work on the problem, and then check the solutions and the answers again in the terminal session. And that's so far how I would like to entice you to try Vim. And this is nothing that we're going to talk about today, how to set all of this up. That takes a lot more work and probably 1 or 2 weeks of going into Vim, but I will give you the resources at the end that will guide you there. So if you follow these resources at the end, you will have this kind of lightweight IDE set up yourself. And now I would like to show you the one thing. If you only take one thing with you from the whole talk today, that's it. And that is how to get out of Vim. Because if you get stuck in Vim and you don't, first you have to know that it's Vim. And if you don't know how to get out of it, how can I say, most people have to turn off their terminal to actually get out of it. And where could this matter? Git on the command line, for example, the default editor for Git is Vim. So if you ever happened to run a Git command and you landed inside an editor and didn't know how to get out of, that was Vim. And if you just want to get out of it, I'll show you how to do that now. You type again the colon, then Q for quit, and an exclamation mark or a bang sign, which means command quit, exclamation mark, bang means don't care about saving. Because if you don't do that, it will ask you, okay, you didn't save. So, and then you get out of it and you're back out of it. Again, if you just want to open a file, you can just, for example, use Vim and then type the file name and it will open the file name right away. I hope this really made you interested in Vim a little bit. We talked about what you can do with it with my setup. Now I would like to move on to getting started. And I would like you to show how you can actually do these things that I was just showing you, but never explained to you what I actually did. This is a starting file. It's basically where I would go back and forth because I have 4 other files. You can see them here. And basics, moving around, commands, and extras. It's no accident that this looks like Ruby code. I thought that using fake Ruby code to show you how to move around and what you can do with Vim will make it more meaningful for you. It's not code that you can actually run, but that you can recognize and you can see where some of the commands might be helpful. And that starts with this one. This is actually a basic, the starting file, and there are tags in there, so I can just move with short tagging commands to the different files. And this is a good example, this one, because we have a class called basics. There we instantiate a new object, and on that new object, we call the undo method. So what you can do with tags in Vim is, if you see that, then, and you have tagging set up, then you can follow that tag and see right away what the undo method in basic does. I can just jump here and you can see it jumps, it opens up a new file. That's actually the, you can see up here. It's called the class basics, and it jumped down here to the line where the undo method is defined. You have the definition of the undo method. And if that happens to you in a large project and you want to know, then with a simple click, you can just look what's the actual implementation of the undo method. And if you want, you can just hop back, and then you're back in the original program that you were reading. So let's get started. Basics. What's the first one? How to quit. I just showed you how to do that. I'm not going to do that again, but it's basically typing :Q, bang. That's, if you only take one thing with you, that's the most important part. Again, how to save. :W. Getting a little more advanced. You can, of course, save and quit at the same time. All you need to do is type :W, Q. That's what you can do with a lot of commands, that you can just chain one after another as long as they make sense. That's how you, in the end, write little scripts. You just use a lot of commands that you chain one after another, like you would do in Ruby, and they just get executed one after another until you have your desired result. Another important thing is, how do you get help in Vim? Again, just :, and help. I can show you that one. Oops. This splits the screen and it opens the Vim documentation, which itself is a Vim document. So you can use Vim commands to move around there and use tags and a lot of other things to move around this long file. The documentation is pretty helpful. What I usually do is I Google something, find out if there's a command and how it works, and then I read the documentation, because usually in the documentation there are a lot more options on any command than you find on Stack Overflow or on the net. And sometimes there are really nuggets that really can help you in your given situation. Of course, you can just look for a command, help in a command, in a mode and command, and get direct help. For example, what does U, in this case undo, do? Help U will open the help file, the documentation for undo, which is our next part. Undo. How do you undo something in a regular editor? On a Mac, you use Command-Z or Command-Shift-Z to redo, which is kind of like clicking two buttons. In Vim, here that's how we get started, all you need is to type U. For example, if I delete this line, it's gone. If I type U, it's back again. Very simple, and it just undoes the last step. You can have 10,000 undos, so it's persistent, and there are lots of other backup ways in Vim. But basically, backing things up in Vim is kind of automatic, and it's a little bit overblown, so in the beginning you want to turn it down a little bit. Here's another one, because we have capital U, of course, and a normal U, small u, and a capital U. The capital U is undo everything on this line. If you have a long line with a lot of chains and you change a couple of things, and then you want to say, okay, I want to go back, capitalized U, and you're all back to normal. It's a pretty handy feature in certain situations. And of course, redo exists as well. We have Control R. It's a little shorter, but we rarely use it. So Control R, there you can see it's a control key that we'll use. So far, so good. Let's get started with the big stuff, modes. As I alluded before, we don't have a mouse, so we can't just click on things, easily mark things or click buttons. That's why Vim has different modes. As you can see down here, right now it says normal mode. For example, now it says visual mode, and it's marked as a visual mode. When I want to write something, I will have to go into insert mode. So that's very simple. Insert mode is the mode where you actually write things. In normal mode, you do things. In normal mode, you can move around and give commands, like, for example, delete something, or make everything, like comment out things, get blank spaces, get blank lines, all these things that you do in normal mode, everything that you would normally do with other buttons. And that's what you use the letters on the keyboard for. We have a lot of letters, so you get a lot of different commands that you can use with those. And one command in normal mode is the I command. If you type I, in this case, I type I, you see, it turns blue, this is my setup, and white, and it says insert mode. So from now on, I can't give commands with my letters. I will type the letters like you do in every other editor in the world. So, or not everyone, but all the normal editors that we use today. So, for example, I can write hello there. If I want to get out of insert mode, I type escape, and I'm back into normal mode. So and if you see below there, here, there is A. You can use I to get in insert mode and A. What's the difference? The difference is, if I type I while being on the E, it will insert the text before the E, and the E gets pushed to the right. But what if I want to add something, after the E? What if, then I can type A. In this case, Vim jumps to the next, creates another empty space there and jumps there. And now I can write a little more text. Hello there, my friend. And I can get out of there. So you can see we already have two ways to go into insert mode, and they are dependent on the things that you actually want to do. So if you just want to insert something, then type I. If you want to add something, then type A. Escape always gets you back. And backspace, of course, deletes the last characters. One thing you will find is that there are many ways to do the same thing in Vim. And what Vimmers try to do is to find the one where you need the least keystrokes and the least amount of mental energy to do something. So let's go to the next one, to the next class, moving around. Now we had some basics down, and I would like to show you why you can move around so blazingly fast in Vim without using a mouse. And let's go and cover the basics. What are the basic movements? As I alluded before, H, if I type H, you go right. If I type A, L, you go left. J goes down and K goes up. Knowing that is pretty easy. The hard part is the muscle memory. I still get these things wrong every once in a while. And I think that's what I practiced most of the time. I think the first 4 weeks was mostly practicing getting H, J, K, and L down and not messing it up all the time. But that is always just one line or one character. What if I want to go to the beginning of the line? I can type the caret button. What if I want to go to the end of the line? The dollar sign. Very simple. I can go back and forth. If you know little regex, you know that those are the signs in regex for beginning of the line and end of the line. I don't know if regex came first or Vim or V came first, but that's how they set it up. And it makes moving around very, very quickly, because quite often you want to go to the beginning of the line. And here, one nice thing, if I type the caret button, it doesn't jump to the real beginning of the line, but to the first character, because Vim knows that most of the time you just want to add something there, because we have code and we don't want to start at the beginning of the line, but actually where the line indentation should start. Let's go a little deeper into movement commands. Go to. What do I mean by go to? In this case, there are the GG command and the G command, and they are very, very beneficial. Basically, GG is the movement that says go to the top. If I type GG, I'm at the top of the document. If I type capital G, I'm at the bottom of the command of the document. That's one of the things. Sometimes one of the commands, I have to find out why it actually breaks the syntax highlighting, but sometimes that happens in a certain command line. Well, Vim is not perfect, and there's a lot to learn, and the more you customize, the more you have to learn about it. The good thing about it is you can very easily move to the top and to the bottom. If you think, okay, how often do you need that? Sometimes you need it, but the good thing is you can combine these movement commands, and it's all these movement commands later with normal commands. For example, delete, and there you can use delete and go to the bottom to delete everything from here to the bottom, just with a few keystrokes. Let's add a little to that, which is called moving distances. So before I said that if I just type J one time, I jump down one line. If I type K one time, I jump up one line. I can now add a count. I can now add a count, and with that count and the movement command, I can move a certain amount of lines down. One thing I like to add, I can see here on line 64, and I activated a mode that is relative line numbering. So I know how many lines I have to jump. So let's say I'm here and I would like to jump to the end on line, that's on line 5. Then I can just type, because I know it's 5 lines down, 5. And if you now look here, lower right, the 5 appeared. In here on this side, you can see the commands that you can start chaining together. And this 5 now waits for another command. The 5 by itself doesn't have any meaning. It just says 5, and then it waits for some movement or some command that it can relate to. And now I'm just going to use the J key, and down here it disappeared. Command is done, and it jumped me down 5 lines. And that's how you can move so quickly. It's one of the ways to move very quickly through Vim. You can remember this one, this line. It's now line 69. Let's say I go 24 lines up, and I'm there. I'm in class moving around because I just have to look there. Now I could, if I want to go to the end, I could go to line 24 and move 24 down. Or if I know the line numbering, this case 69, I can just type 69 and capital G, and that means go to line 69. Where is this useful? Whenever you have an error message in a long piece of code, and this is like there's an error on line, what, I don't know, 554, you can just scroll through there on Vim. You just type the line number that you read and type capital G, and it jumps directly to that line. And if you have your editor and the error message side by side, you can just work on the error right away. No scrolling, no looking up, very, very simple. Moving words. Moving by distances is pretty nice, but we have an editor. So Vim knows what a word is. Usually a word is very similar to a regex. Words, letters, numbers, and underscores count as words. And you have different commands, for example, like the W, the E, the B, and the GE. Those are the basics one that just help you move word by word. There are even a couple more, but yeah, that would be too much. For example, right now I'm on puts. Let's say I want to go to this. And if I type W one time, I jump to the single quotes because they're its own sign. And if I type again, I'm in this. And if I just keep typing W, it just jumps to the beginning of the next word. If I type B, it does the opposite. It jumps to the beginning of the last word. If I type E, it jumps to the end of the next word or the current word. Depends on where I am. Again, all by itself, it doesn't make so much sense, but later, if you want to use commands, then you can use the commands for E and B and W to give the commands more meaning. For example, you can say delete the next 3 words. To show you what that means, if I type B, I'm at the end. If I type W, it jumps to the next line because this method call is just one word. That's very nice because if I want to have a command, I just have to tell the command, if I just want to have the method call, just go until the end of the word. It makes it very, very simple to remember what you have to do if you want to maybe capitalize it, delete it, do different things with it, copy it. Another thing you can do is, for example, I can, again, type 5. You can see the 5 here. And I can type E, and it jumps to the next end of the next word. In this case, it's A. It's just a one-line word. So let's do 2 and E, and we're at the end of off. Very simple. So far, we have just simple movements, which are just up and down. And now we have words. So if you have a word, it's an object and that you can use to define movements. But Vim is even faster and even nicer. And that's I call it find a chart because it's so nice. And it starts with F, which is the basic one. And what F does is, if you type F in a line, let's give it a try here. If I type F, you can see F is waiting down here now. It's a command by itself, it doesn't make any sense. Now it waits for me to put in a char that it should look for. And to give it a lot of meaning right now, let's say I'm here and I would like to find out here, jump directly to the block parameters. And I would just like to, for the first block, I would just like to stop there. I can type the F and then the pipe symbol. And I jump to the pipe right away. And that's one of the most beautiful things in Vim, is that instead of having to just click around or hammer one button a lot of times until I'm there, like left and right and up and down, I can think, okay, where do I want to go? How do I get there the fastest? In this case, if I want to go to the 2, I can write capital F, you can see capital F down here, which is F but backwards, and I can type the 2, and I'm there at the 2. Because I can see the line, I know it's probably the only 2 in there, and it jumps directly there. And again, F, it works with counts, so I can say don't jump to the first I. I want to jump F to the third I. 3, F, and I. And then it jumps to the third I, ignoring the first 2 I's in here. And with that, you can move very, very blazingly fast. What's the difference between F and T? The difference between F and T, I can show you here. If I use, I'm going to go into visual mode. All these things work in visual mode as well, but visual mode, you don't really use it in Vim. It's kind of like just, you could call it a crutch a little bit. If I use F and the space bar, you can see it jumps to the space bar directly. So I have highlighted everything, including the space bar. If I use T and the space bar, oops, need to go to visual mode again. T and the space bar, it just stops one before this character. In this case, as you can see with index, it's very useful. If I just want to copy with index to delete it, and if I use F, I would delete the space as well. But this way, I can just use T, and I know it's just gonna copy, delete, or do whatever with index, and leave the space bar, the space intact. Another thing, if you use semicolon or colon, you can repeat the same movement back and forth. For example, if I have to go through ice, I can just use those to just use the last movement again. Important thing to know is when you use F and T, it just works on this line. It doesn't jump to the next line to do something else. Another thing, that's something that all editors have search. But the beauty of Vim is how easy it is. All I need to do is type / like in a regex. For example, I type search, it's highlighted. Usually I can highlight everything, but there are different options you can use, and then enter. And if I type N, I can just search through all the versions of search. If I type capital N, I'll just go back. Very, very easy to do. But here comes something even better. You remember goto? If I type star or the pound sign, I can search for the word under the cursor directly. You can see, I just typed star and it jumped to the goto method. And now it jumps back to where it finds it again. And as you can see here, I can fake calling the goto method. And if I type star, it jumps to the either the next call or the definition, as long as the method name is unique enough. If it would be just search the method name, there are probably other search words in there, like you've seen before. But there it's very, very useful. If you have a long document and with a lot of classes in there and you just want to change something, for example, change a method name, you can just scroll through the method names pretty easily and then change them very easily. There's another trick how you can do that, and I'll talk about that later. Those are the basic movements that you use. Now I would like to go through some extra movements, something that you know from other editors. For example, Control D and Control U, they just scroll half a page up or down. You can use it if you just want to browse a document or you're not sure what you're looking for, then you can just jump quickly through the document. There are as well ways to scroll full pages or even more, and you can even give some options to customize that as well, however you like. One of the nice things you can actually do with scrolling is you can synchronize buffers. The buffer is basically the editor window, and if you have more open, you can synchronize that. It's pretty nice if you have a Git diff and you are going through the diff and want to see what's the original one, and then you can synchronize it so when you scroll in the one buffer, the other one buffer will scroll as well, and so you don't always have to jump back and forth between buffers. Something that's really nice, and you've probably seen me do that before. And as you can see, I'm now pretty low on the screen. So maybe I would like to have that more in the middle because it's easier to read. Then you can just type ZZ. And ZZ keeps the cursor in the position, but moves the screen so the cursor is in the middle. And the same works with the Z top, then it's in the top of the screen, or Z button, where it's in the bottom of the screen. I like ZZ the best. Actually, that's a typo, because it's in the middle of the screen. And quite often it works even when you're at the end of the document, then you just have blank lines underneath. But when you enter on the document, you just want to see the end of the document a little better, you just type ZZ and you're good to go. It's in the middle of the screen again. All right, let's use it with Z top. And let's go to commands. So right now we have the movements down, and there are the basics. We have counts, so we can use counts to add with movements to move a little more quickly, and combine them to have tiny chains of commands. So now let's add some real commands. There are different commands in Vim, and I would like to use the delete commands to show you how it works. There are others, I will talk about some later, but for example, when I showed you how to comment out a lot of things or a lot of lines at the same time, that's a command. And you can combine that again with movements to get a certain outcome. And not much more talking, let's get started. Delete a char. How do you delete a char in Vim? Very simple. Here we have p puts, so one p is too much. All you need to do to delete a char is just type X, and the char is gone, deleted. Let's go down here. How do you delete two chars? Very easy. Again, you can use a count and the X to X, and the next two chars were deleted. These case the two P's. If I do that here again, the U and the T is deleted. I can type U and I'm back where I started. How about a backspace? If I don't want to go, I could go into insert mode and then use backspace, but I can just use capital X and delete the char before the char. So it's not deleting the current char like an X, but the char before. And here again, I could use some count to say how many chars I would like to delete. It's if I just want to delete a char or something minor, those commands are very useful. But if I want to delete more, we have other commands in Vim. And the first one, or the most important one, is delete, or in short, D. Makes sense, D for delete. So the big question is, the first one, the easiest one is, how do you delete a complete line? You just type DD and the line is gone. With U, I can get it back. What DD does is, D says, I can type it down here. You can see D is showing up here. It's the command. And now D is waiting for an object or a movement to work on. And in this case, if I do DD, it means the current line. That's one of the things you can remember for all commands. If you repeat the command button, then this means do it just for the current line. So DD deletes the current line. Another nice, and again, you can see I can combine DD with a count, which means if I type 2DD, it will delete this line and the next. So again, I can just use my relative line numbering on the side, just count it down, and I know if I want to delete the next two, this in the next line, I just type 2DD, and it's gone. Again, now we get a little more complex. I have a 2 down in the right, I add a D, now I have a command chain, and if it's waiting for the next command. So in this case, if I add another D, it means delete this and the next line. And again, here we have a combination of a count, a command, and an object. And that's how VIM basically works in normal mode. That you combine these things to get the action that you actually want. So let's go over a couple more. This one, DAW, stands for delete a word. And here's another thing, mnemonics. VIM with D, it tries to be a little mnemonic. So it tries that when you use certain commands that it's easy to remember them. Like DAW is delete a word or delete around a word. Because what it does is it deletes the current word. I just go in the middle of the word to show you how it works, and the space after it. So it deletes a space and a word. So these 4 X's are wrong, and I would like to get rid of them, and the space, because I don't need 2 spaces between is and A. So I can type D, shows up lower right, A, and now it's waiting for word or something else, and it deletes the word. I can get it back, and I can type it again. Delete a word. Very simple. All I had to know is, okay, I want to delete this word, and then delete a word, mnemonic. It's very, very simple. Once you have that in your muscle memory, it becomes a no-brainer. You just do the things. You just move there quickly and then issue the commands. And that makes VIM so blazingly fast. But it has a steep learning curve because you have to learn these muscle memories and these ideas. Another thing, DIW, delete inside word mnemonic. Almost the same, but if I do D, I, and W, it deletes the word without the space. So sometimes if I want to keep the space or some other, maybe it's another chart that I don't want to delete, then I just do delete inside word, and it just keeps everything around it. It's just a little difference, but once you have that problem, you just know what to do. You know, do I want to delete the space or not? And then you just give the correct command. In case you were thinking, DW, of course it exists. It means delete word, but DA and DI delete the whole word, so they look left and right. DW just deletes from the position of the cursor to the end of the word, including the space. So what if I want to keep the space? It is DE, because as you remember, W means move to the next beginning of the next word, and E means move to the end of this word. So DE deletes the rest of the word, but not the space. And that's kind of like the beauty of it. I can't say it any other way, but once you really like, if you're like me and you really like the system, it's the beauty that you just think about. You don't just click and do always the same thing, but you think what you actually want to do and then just do it. And there are so many different ways, and you learn more and more about Vim. You find what other people found for beautiful solutions to the same problem to make it even a little more quicker, a little bit more easy to know and to remember. Very, very, I think very, very beautiful. All right, delete a distance. Now we talked about objects before with distances first. So my cursor is right here. And now I just want to delete the rest of it. I could just mark everything and hit delete, or just delete, use X as long as I want, or I can just type D, and as we had, $, go to the end of the line. And that's it. In this case, instead of before, if I just type the $, I jump to the end of the line. If I type D for delete and then give the move command end of the line, Vim interprets it as delete everything until the end of the line. Of course, the same works if I want to delete everything until the beginning of the line. With Parade, I can do the same thing. Again, I just need to know what I want to do. And once I know, okay, delete, D stands for delete something, then I just have to know, okay, what's the movement that I would like to do? Again here, DF, I just want to delete this puts in front. So I can just type D, then F, you can see the F, now it's waiting for a character. The character here would be the space, I type space, it's gone. Very, very simple. Maybe I want to delete everything until I reach the curly braces. I can do D, then a T, and the curly braces. And everything up to the curly braces is deleted. I'm now doing a lot of deletes, but you can think of any command like copying, like pasting something, like commenting out something. All these commands work the same way. So I'm just using delete because it's very easy to see what I'm doing here. And that's, again, you just think, okay, what do you want to do? And then you just do it. For example, one more. I could just make a very long connection and just do, for example, D. You can see. Now I want to 1, 2, 3, 4, all these special words in single quotes. Type a 4, then an F, and a single quote. And what does it do? It says, okay, delete what? 4, and look for the 4th single quote. Bang, and it's gone. This is a little contrived example. You probably won't do that, but I just wanted to show you how long commands you can easily do. You can build even longer commands if you do scripting, because there you have more options. You can use, for example, enter and other buttons just one after another. You see, I'm using ZZ a lot because it just brings it into the middle, and it's very, very easy to see. Hopefully for you as well as for me. All right, delete everything. If you type D and G, I can just do it because I can. Everything is deleted below. The line including everything below. The same, D40G, what does it do? Delete everything up to and including line 40. Makes more sense, doesn't really make sense with deletion, but I just wanted to show it for complete sake. D5J, delete the next 5 lines. I'm just going to go through them real quickly, but you can see there are different types of commands how you can delete everything. And how to delete everything? You just do GG, go to the top, and then D, capital G. And everything is deleted because you're at the top and you're telling them delete everything, including this line, until the end of the file. Here's something nice, something that's very useful. Delete inside parentheses. There are many of these little gimmicks that you will learn with Vim over time. So I'm in the parentheses, and I would just like to delete everything that's in here. All I need to do is type D, then an I for inside, as we had with inside Word, and then I just type the parentheses, and everything is gone. With deletion, it's not so useful, but there's a change command. Then you can just change everything in there. Works the same with the single quotes. Delete, side, single quotes. It's gone. And I can now write something else in there. Just the command and the movement, or the object in this case. So let's go over it. What's the commands in general? You always have a count, or you don't, you optionally have a count and a command plus an object and a direction. Or you can have a command, a count, and an object and a direction. Most of the time, like in this one, D5J is the same as 5DJ. You have the count here first, and here you have the count in the middle. It doesn't matter. There are other things. For example, if you use the F command, you have to have the count always before the F command. Because if you do F and 5, it will look for a 5. If you do 5F, then it looks for the 5th char that you type after the F. And that's the basic way to use Vim. You always have a command, you have an optional count, and you give that command an object like a word or parentheses, inside parentheses, around parentheses. That works as well. So if I want to delete the parentheses, I can use A instead of I. And you are a direction, like go to the top or go to the bottom, go to the next 5 files, do it for three lines. And that's the core of how you can use Vim. If you can remember this one, then all you have to know is what are the commands and what are the objects or directions they work with. And usually all well-written plugins for commands always use almost all the objects or directions. And there are plugins that actually add more objects. For example, I have one that just highlights, in this case, it just selects the whole method. So if I would like to work on one method, delete it or copy it, I can just do that with one command. And it works on Ruby and just does some command with the current method. So I think I have a couple more minutes left, and I would probably go with questions, or if there's still some time, I would go over some extra that might be really nice. I don't hear anything, so I would guess I just go with
you have one question, is given a
yeah, I can't see it, but if you would read it for me, it'll be...
What are you typing in that lets you type in multiple commands, for example, 5H?
Can you repeat the question? Yeah. 5H?
What are you typing in that lets you type in multiple commands?
Oh, multiple commands. That's the general behavior of Vim. That's nothing special in Vim, actually. That's how you work. You just start a command chain by using some type of command. And every command, like in this case, let's go with delete in this line, D, it shows up here. And if you just type D in Vim, you will have to tell Vim what to delete. Because just, let's take an opposite approach, X. If I type X just one time, it just deletes the current char, because X just works on the current char that is selected. But D is more complex. D says, okay, delete, and then tell me what. And then you can, for example, say, delete until the end of this line. And then you have to give it the movement that says until the end of this line, which is the $sign. If you type D and then a $sign, it deletes everything until the end of the line. And depending on the command, you can give more or less optional objects or directions. For example, as we had the D, I parentheses, the I is saying inside, but it's just optional. It's just saying, you can do it here. D, I have double quotes, I, and now I have delete and then delete inside. But what inside shall I delete? Vim doesn't, in this case, Vim doesn't automatically know that you mean the double quotes. Here, I only have double quotes. But if we go up to line 7 and go to the single quotes, right now, if I type DI, Vim doesn't know, do I mean delete inside the single quotes or do I mean delete inside the parentheses? So Vim never tries to infer what you mean. You have to know what you mean and then just give the command. And if I just use single quotes as a char, then Vim knows, okay, delete inside the single quotes. I hope that makes the question, makes it a little clearer. I see there are some more questions. Yeah,
can you see the chat questions? And I will read to you later questions from Q&A box.
If I can, here's the chat. Cool. Hey Mark, I have a question. I'm new to learning Vim. Sometimes when I type DIW, I meant to type CIW. Is there a way to edit commands and motions if there was a typo? What is the plugin itself for line numbers on the site? All right, and no, there is just one way to go back, and that's U. If you made a typo, just type U. For example, if I type DD, if I type DD here and I didn't want to delete this line, I type U and you're back there. That's all you do. Then you mean the line numbers? That's actually not a plugin, that's stock Vim. Well, all you need to do, you can just look up numbers or line numbers on Google and there you get all the options. Basically, what you do is set line numbers or relative line numbers, and then you can just type it colon, and then for example, numbers, it's just number, I already have. Oh yeah, it has to be, I never did this actually. But you can look up number or here, help number, and have to go through it a little bit, and then you can find. I would just, in this case, I would just Google set line numbers, because if you just put set number, then the numbers on the site will appear, and then you have different configuration options if you want to have relative numbers like I have them. But that's depends on how you like them.
Okay, so there is another question.
Set number. Exactly. No, not in the chat box.
Okay, so I will read you the question. It says, does the learning effort and the time consumed to learn worth it? What is your personal view on this? So was it worth it to learn Vim?
I think it definitely was worth it because number one, learning Vim really got me closer to the command line, because learning Vim and starting to use config files and scripts is, how can I say, very motivational, because you learn some light scripting and you can see right away what it does. You script something in Vim, then you hit up the editor and you see what it does. And it changes colors, it changes commands, and you can just play around with that without breaking your system. And if you don't want it anymore, you just delete it from Vim and it's gone. And from there, I just started actually going into the command line a lot more. I started with Vim, then went into the command line with tmux and learned a lot more. And so from using mostly window apps, I moved gradually now to using more and more the command line only. I use some for emails and for calendars. I still use regular apps, but everything else, I just try to use the terminal because there are a lot of beautiful programs that are a lot quicker and better to use than the alternatives on the desktop. And I think Vim really helped me to get there. And then for coding, I just, it's just so much faster. So if you just want to write code and you don't have to use an IDE, I think Vim probably is the best way to go. It was totally worth it. So next question. I hope that answers it.
Okay, so I'm going to read you the question from Q&A and then you will have another one in the chat. So the question for Q&A is, being that Vim is integrated in with the shell, can you execute Vim scripts in a Ruby program via the system command to manipulate files?
I think yes, because I'm not an expert on that, but I know that there are Vim script programs that have actually been written in Ruby and that interact with each other. So I would say if you go down that road, you you can definitely do that. There's a way to do that. And there are different, I think there are even other programming languages that you can use to interact with Vim, or the other way around. For example, if it's actually something from later, but I can just type bang and ls, and what it does, it jumps back to the shell and just prints out the working directory. And that's it. That's how interactive it is from the editor. But you can use a lot more if you go into scripting. I hope that answers the question. Then chat box question. I'm in the middle of the second attempt at learning Vim. The first time I gave up because I was in the middle of learning Ruby syntax, and having to think about both Ruby syntax and Vim syntax required so much mental overhead that it felt took forever to get anything done. Any recommendations for avoiding getting overwhelmed while learning launch school material and Vim? Actually, I started Vim after I finished the first part of Ruby. I think it was Ruby 101 and that 109. After I finished that, I heard about it before, and then I just took 2 weeks, 1 or 2 weeks off of Ruby, and just got the basics down to in Vim. And once I felt comfortable, I was just going over old exercises and just trying to redo them in Vim. That's what I did. And that's how I just learned a little bit and then tried it in Vim. And after 2 weeks, I found that I was so comfortable that I just continued learning Ruby and Vim on the side. And I kind of like split it like 80-20. So 80% of the time Ruby and 20% of the time Vim. I'll give you the keynote, and at the end you'll find some links where you can learn a lot more, and where you can get detailed tutorials on how to set up a lot of the things that I've been doing here, and even more. And if you just put in some time in there, you can easily learn how that works. But I wouldn't really mix it up at the same time, at least in the beginning. Later it's easier, because then you just learn certain commands and they all work the same. Okay, cool. Next question.
Yeah, next question. Are there any other useful Vim modes outside of insert and command line that you find useful used in daily practice?
Actually, yes, there's one. And that is block. Actually, I only use normal mode and insert mode. Visual mode, I only use the block version, which is Control V. Then you can see down here, V block. And if you have a lot of things, you can just go down and left, and you see it uses the block. And let's say I want to, I can use capital I, and it jumps into insert mode. And for example, it doesn't make sense here, but that's what I use it. I can use puts. And when I hit escape, it just adds puts to all the lines at the beginning that I edited, or I can do it with the end. That's the only one I use. For example, when I have some test cases where I have to add a lot of puts, or I want to add certain things in the middle somewhere, then I use that one. The other ones, I don't really use them. There are supposed to be 12 different modes. I haven't read up on all of those, but insert mode and normal mode are the big ones. Oh, now I can, oops. I can now actually see the questions. I know where they are. And do you want to read them again, or shall I just go through them and read them myself?
Well, I have read all the questions, so there aren't any.
Okay. Do we have some time to go over the last few extras, because there are some cool things I would like to show?
Sure.
Cool. Okay, extras. Okay, one thing that I think is very, very important is how to insert a new line below or above. And that's just O. On your normal mode, you type O, and you get a new line, and it is indented. So beautiful. Why doesn't, that's something I'm missing on all the other editors, because you're somewhere in your old line in here, and you just, okay, I need a new line. How do you do that? Go to the end of the line, press enter or return. Or here just O. If I want to do some on top, capital O, you're there. You get a new line, blank line. Very, very easy. So simple. That's the beauty of Vim. You have very simple solutions to otherwise kind of like complex problems. Copy and paste. It's just another command. Y for yank stands for copy. For example, if I go to the Word and I type YAW, that word is copied. And if I type P, it's pasted. YY, copy current line, and P again, paste. And because if it's YY again, the command is Y, and another Y means do the command for the current line, which in this case is copy the current line and paste. And in this case, it copies line and the new line sign. So if you do paste, it copies in the new line. Very, very useful. For example, I could just copy 3YY and P, and now I get the next, I copied 3 lines and just pasted them in there. Doesn't really make sense in here, but very, very simple. But again, it's like D, but with Y, which means copy. And one thing that I really wanted to mention is, I was talking about delete, D as delete, but actually it's not delete, it's cut. So if you delete something, for example, I delete this line, I can paste it many times because I didn't actually delete it, I cut it into the register. Registers is actually a special thing in Vim. We're not going to go into that, but basically you have 26 different registers where you can save code or whatever you want into it and then paste it from there. So if you say, okay, I want this in 5 minutes because I need this, I don't know, method name quite often, then you can save it into a special register just in Vim, and then you can just paste it from there whenever you need it. And it just stays there basically until you end the current buffer. And here's another one that someone alluded for, it's the C. C is a combination of D plus I. And that's actually what's a lot more useful. One of the things that I use all the time. I've changed me in here. So, and I would like to change the parentheses inside there. So I can just type C inside and the parentheses. And what it does is it deletes everything. And as you can see here, it jumps into insert mode. So now I can just write changed. And there I am. Very simple. CI parentheses. And I can just type something new in the parentheses. And this change command is very, very beneficial. I use it a lot more than delete. Insert modes, we had I. Oops, we had I and A. And here is capital I and capital A. And it just does the same thing. It's a combination of caret and I. Just capital I means jump to the beginning of the line and jump into insert mode. And here we're back at Vim. So why, if you thought about, okay, if I want to insert something in the beginning of the line, why do I have to go there and then type I? Well, you can just type capital I and it does the same thing. And there are a lot of commands and things like that that are really, really helpful. And the more you learn about Vim, you more learn about these little shortcuts, which makes life a lot easier. And how you discover them? You actually have this problem. It's kind of like, okay, hey, why do I have to do 2 type? Why do I have to do this to get like 2 commands? Is there a faster way in Vim? And then usually there is. And here, that's probably the last one, repeat. This is one of the best things ever in Vim. Here, alt text. So I can do change inside double quotes. Now I'm in insert mode. And now I can type, this is the new text here, and escape. Now Vim has saved this command chain, which is basically change or delete everything inside the double quotes and type go into insert mode and type this text that I just typed. And if I go in here and if I type the dot sign, then it will do exactly the same command chain. So if I type dot, it's exactly the same text because it just did the same thing. Do change, so delete and insert inside the double quotes and then put this text in here. And where is this very, very beneficial? Let's say I don't want this to be called repeat anymore, or we can do another one. I go back to my, let's do go to. Here, that's how you can move in Vim. So I know, okay, this is go to, that's my method. But go to I think I don't want this underscore anymore, or I want to name it completely. So we do change inside Word. I'm in insert mode, and I, let's say, move next and escape. So I use search, as you remember, to go to. If I type end now, I can go through all the go-tos that I can find. And you see, now I'm at go-to again. And if I have the method, first I had the method definition, I changed the method name of the method definition. Now I'm at the method call. So what do I want to do now? I want to change that method call as well, or else it's not going to work. So I hit dot, and it's changed because it does the exact same thing. Change inside Word, so replace the word with the text I'm now going to write, then I write the text and it saves it. And if I, basically, if I would type it here, it would change too much, so that you have to be a little bit careful with it. But other than that, it's a very, very quick way to repeat the same command, especially in those cases where you have to repeat something or change something repeatedly. There it's very, very helpful. There's an ebook I'm going to show you at the end, and it starts actually with the dot command because they say that's the best part of it. Thank you very much. I'm gonna, I guess if there's a couple more things in the extras, you can read through them yourselves or shoot me up with some questions about them, but that's as far as I try to go today. And here are the resources. It's the last part. The Vim tutor, if you want to get started with Vim, I'd highly recommend you to, on Linux and on macOS, that you type Vim tutor in the shell prompt, and it just run the basic Vim teaching program. It is quite ugly, but it'll teach you in a simple way all the basic commands. And I would recommend it to do it for a week, at least 1 or 2 times a day, until you have the basic muscle movements down for the most important commands and movements. They're all in there. There's another one, Open Vim. It's an interactive tutorial. You can try it out. I didn't like it as much as Vim Tutor, but you can learn a lot about Vim in there. And then the big one, that's the ThoughtBot Upcase Vim class from Chris Toomey. It takes quite some time. It's very, very dense, but it's very, very well done. And in the end, you will learn about configuration files, basic plugins, and how to set up your own Vim configurations. After this class, I knew probably 85% of what I know of Vim today. And the last 15% I taught myself by looking at online, basically at the original plugins and at Stack Overflow and going from there. But this is a very big step. So the combination of Vim Tutor and ThoughtBot, put in, it depends on how fast you are, 1 or 2 weeks or a month, and you can really get deep into Vim. The last one, the ebook, it's more like a reference. Later, if you have questions about Vim and you want to know about a topic a little bit more deeply, that practical Vim ebook will really help you with that, to get a little more deeply into certain topics. Because Stack Overflow is helpful, but sometimes it's so brief that you actually get a solution, but you have no idea how it works. So practical Vim and the documentation can really help you with that. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for the questions. If there are more questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, all the best and thank you.